Today we are talking about Kelsey Turner, and oh boy was she a piece of work, because Kelsey was probably the most entitled person you could come across. She always wanted to be center of attention. She was very passive aggressive, argumentative, and then one day in her 20s Kelsey started up this influencer career. She started modeling on Instagram, and then things got more and more provocative until eventually Kelsey starts glamour modeling. She made the front cover of magazines. She ended up on red carpets. She was living up her dream in LA, and she even featured in Playboy. But then one day, slowly but surely, Kelsey's modeling career kind of started to come to an end. And she was desperate for money, and she was willing to do pretty much anything to get her hands on money. And things quickly turn very nasty very quickly and take a very deadly turn. So Kelsey is now living a life of luxury in Vegas. She's going for nights out. She starts working at events again. She's doing a bit of glamour modeling again. And obviously she's mostly living off the money that Thomas has given her to get rid of her. And Thomas and Judy truly believed that they had seen the last of Kelsey. But was that the case? Unfortunately, no. Because Kelsey realized that even though she was working a little bit now, doing glamour modeling and doing events, etc., earning money in the real world, a lot of money in the real world, is pretty difficult. And Kelsey was not prepared for that. She didn't want to work anymore. She had gotten used to Thomas. She had gotten used to Thomas paying for absolutely everything, and she was basically doing the bare minimum. She didn't want to have to work again for money. So who did she turn to? She went running straight back to Thomas. But this time she tried different tactics. Instead of guilt tripping Thomas into giving her money because she's this poor, vulnerable single mom, she decides to blackmail him instead. This is when Kelsey came up with a whole host of lies. She said that she knew that Thomas was a pedophile. Kelsey said that she knew that there was a load of indecent images on his computer, and she was going to expose him and ruin his reputation. And just in case it's not obvious, none of this is true. Or at least there has never been any evidence even indicating that Thomas is a pedophile or even owns indecent images. So it's a whole load of lies. But Thomas, he was a child psychiatrist. He obviously worked with children his whole life. He had a very good reputation, and he was definitely worried because he didn't want the idea or lie out there that he was a pedophile, because we all know when you get labeled something like that, even if it's not true, it sticks. So Thomas gave in to Kelsey's blackmail and extortion, and he started sending her money all over again. So once again, Kelsey is living off of Thomas's money, and she can now live the life of luxury and not have to work. So once again, she starts buying herself a load of luxurious items. So Thomas starts paying rent on a 4-bedroom house in Vegas for Kelsey and her son. However, what Thomas didn't know is that Kelsey invited a whole load of other people to live with her as well. But she did this in secret because she still wanted Thomas to think that she was this vulnerable single mom that was in need of money. So Thomas was not aware that other people were living in this house. So the first roommate that Kelsey invited to live with her for free was a woman called Diana. Now, Diana was a local bartender, and Diana did babysitting for Kelsey. She looked after Kelsey's son whenever Kelsey was out. There was also another roommate named Jeremy. And then on top of this, Kelsey got herself a new boyfriend. This was a man named John Kennison, who went by the nickname Logan. He was 27 years old. He was a former gang member, and he was known to be a bit of a bad boy. And Kelsey developed this relationship with Logan in secret because, again, she didn't want Thomas to know that she had a boyfriend, because I don't even know how to define Kelsey and Thomas's relationship, because he kind of is her sugar daddy again. But like, is there some sort of relationship between the two of them? I don't know. Is it a working relationship, a sexual relationship? All of this is a little bit murky. We don't actually know the details. So this is what Kelsey's life is like for the next few months in Vegas. She's living this life of luxury off of Thomas's money. But this house that she's living in is a crazy house. It is chaotic. There are constantly parties going on, but not just that, fights would break out, huge arguments would spill out outside of the house. Police were called on a number of occasions to this house. And I just want to remind you all that Kelsey's son is living in this house. So this is not a good environment for her son to be living in. And occasionally Thomas would fly out to Vegas to check out the situation, monitor the house, check on Kelsey. And unbelievably, Kelsey was able to keep the fact that she had all of these roommates and she basically had this crazy party house a secret from Thomas. Because whenever he would come, Thomas would warn her. He would call her up and say, hey, Kelsey, I'm coming over for the weekend. So this gave Kelsey enough time to clean up the house. And Thomas had no idea that she actually had this party house and all of these roommates. And he definitely didn't have a clue that she had a boyfriend. However, by the time we get to March of 2019, Thomas decides to pay a visit to Kelsey unannounced, and the situation that he walked into, he was not prepared for. We get to Friday, the 1st of March 2019. On this day, Thomas planned to travel to Vegas. He told his wife Judy that he would be back in 3 days, and everything seemed normal at this point. Thomas arrived in Vegas, and he arrived at the house that he is paying for, that Kelsey is living in, unannounced. And what he came across shocked him to his core, because he came across not only Kelsey living in the house and her currently 4-year-old son, but a whole host of other random people. And Thomas was furious. He called up his wife Judy straight away, and he said to Judy that Kelsey had been lying to him, that she was not a lonely single mom because she had all of these other random people living with her, and all of these other people are living in the house that he is paying for rent-free. So for the next day or so, Thomas stays at the house and he is arguing with Kelsey all of the time, saying that he is going to cut her off because of all of her lies. And then by the following evening, so it's now the 2nd of March, there was even more drama in this household, because one of the roommates, Jeremy, he brought over his girlfriend to the house, because obviously he's living there, and his girlfriend was blind drunk. And the drunk girlfriend started flirting with Thomas. And she was definitely Thomas's type. She was young and she was blonde. And then the drunk girlfriend and Thomas leave the house together. And I'm not sure about Thomas's feelings about all of this, but one thing we do know is that Kelsey was not happy. Kelsey starts ranting and raving, arguing with pretty much anyone, saying that the drunk girlfriend was, quote, trying it on with her man. She was basically threatened that Thomas would find a new woman to spend all his money on. So later on that evening, everyone is just arguing with everyone. It really is the definition of chaos. Eventually, Jeremy and the drunk girlfriend that everyone seems to be arguing over, they do eventually leave. So the only people left in the house are Kelsey, Kelsey's 4-year-old son, Kelsey's secret boyfriend Logan, the other roommate Diana, and Thomas. And you would think that because the drunk people have left, you would think things would get better from here. But unfortunately, they don't. They now just get so much worse. Because later that night, Kelsey manages to get a hold of Thomas's phone and she starts going through all of his messages. And this is when she made a shocking discovery. She found messages between Thomas and her own mom, Samantha. Now, these messages, they were not sexual in any way, if that is where your mind has gone. Thomas had actually contacted Samantha on his own accord because he wanted to express to Samantha how concerned he was for Kelsey, that he felt like she was going down the wrong path. He thought that she might have had a drug problem. And he also expressed that he didn't think that Kelsey and the environment of that house that she was living in was the best environment for her children. And maybe the children should be taken off of her. So when Kelsey saw these messages, she absolutely lost it. She was like, how dare this man interfere in my life, and how dare he suggest that my children should be taken away from me? So another massive argument breaks out, but this time Kelsey starts being incredibly violent towards Thomas. But by this time, Thomas had actually run upstairs and basically barricaded himself into Kelsey's son's room to get away from Kelsey and her violent behavior. But this is when Kelsey turned to her boyfriend, Logan, and she was in a fit of rage. And she said to Logan, beat him up for me. And Logan did just that, no questions asked. He went upstairs, he barged his way into that room, and he started beating Thomas with a baseball bat. And he was just beating him over and over again with this bat, causing serious injuries. He was hitting him over the head. Thomas was bleeding. Eventually, the roommate Diana ran upstairs and she managed to break this up. She managed to get Logan away from Thomas. And Diana started tending to Thomas's injuries because they were serious. He was bleeding quite a lot. And she realized how much of a bad state he was in. He had a massive red and purple bruise on his temple. He was obviously bleeding. He probably had a concussion. And Diana realized that he needed to get to the hospital. So Diana helped Thomas downstairs. She helped him into the garage and she put Thomas in the back seat of Kelsey's Mercedes car. She then turns to Kelsey and says, "You need to drive Thomas to the hospital. He needs to get to the hospital now," because it turns out that Diana herself, she actually couldn't drive. But Kelsey was not having this. She was now getting into an argument with Diana and she just kept ordering Thomas back into the house. And this is when Thomas turned to Diana and said, quote, "If I go back inside, you know they're probably going to kill me, don't you?" But Diana didn't believe this. She was like, no, they're not killers. Yes, they're clearly unhinged, violent people, but surely they're not going to kill Thomas. So Diana agreed to this. She went back into the house. She started cleaning up basically the crime scene, but she was willing to do anything to get Thomas to the hospital because that's where he needed to be. But after Diana went back into the house, this is when all hell broke loose. Because now Kelsey's boyfriend, Logan, turns up in that garage and Kelsey ordered Logan to start attacking Thomas once again. Kelsey was saying things like, "Knock him out. Let's get this done." And when she says, "let's get this done," I think it's safe to assume that the "this" means murder. So this is when Logan pulled out a gun and started pistol whipping Thomas over the back of the head. And Kelsey was on the sidelines the whole time screaming her encouragement. She was also saying, "Come on, hit him harder. Stop being a little bitch. Finish him." So Logan just kept going. He kept hitting Thomas harder and harder with the head of the gun, causing more serious injuries. Diana, who was cleaning up in the house, heard all of the commotion. She came rushing to the garage, hoping and praying that she could stop whatever was happening. But tragically, it was all too late. Logan delivered one blow after another, and the wounds to Thomas became fatal. And this is the moment when Dr. Thomas Bouchard lost his life, which was absolutely horrible. For him to be beaten to death the way he was, nobody deserves that. And it was done in a twisted way as well. Kelsey being there, being basically a cheerleader the whole time. So then we finally get to 2023 and Kelsey finally went to trial. And her defense was basically to blame everything on the boyfriend. She blamed everything on Logan because she was like, he's the one that did the I had nothing to do with it. But in the end, the prosecution showed that Kelsey was the driving force. Yes, she was not technically the one that Thomas with her own hands. That was Logan. But without Kelsey, Logan wouldn't have Thomas. He wouldn't have even started to beat him up. That was all Kelsey encouraging him, ordering him, cheering him on from the sidelines. So this is when Kelsey decided to take an Alford plea, which basically means she's not pleading guilty, but she agrees that there is enough evidence to find her guilty. Very, very confusing. And in exchange, she received 10 to 25 years in prison. Let's hope she serves the 25 years. John Logan Kennison did plead guilty to and was sentenced to 18 to 45 years in prison, which is obviously longer than Kelsey because he was the one that actually did carry out the. And that brings us to the end of today's case. As always, let me know your thoughts, theories, and opinions, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.